Rev up your engines!
Well, I just got back from a trip. I rented a car in Alamo, and man, are they getting cheap now. I don't believe this. I fill the car up with gas before I get to the airport, right? And then I notice, I get the bill on my phone. And what does it say? $2.63 for gas. They're trying to squeeze as much money as they possibly can. So obviously, at their pump, they stuck it in and they filled it until it wouldn't come out anymore and then charged me $2.63. Talk about absurdity, make your customers mad. You bring it back full, it's full, right? Now, they're filling it up to the very toppy top and charging it whatever they can. In this case, they charge $5.63 a gallon. And they claim on this, believe it or not, that I started with 13.7 gallons when they brought me the car. And I brought it back with 13.2 gallons. Now, am I to believe that it really had 13.7 gallons in it? I don't know. You can't measure it. You know, the gauge is in the same position. And I brought it back as when I picked it up. So, you know, shame on you, Alamo, being cheapskates. Super cheapskates, charging me $2.63 when I just filled the thing up, right? You know, I mean, and I always warn people, of course, you never want to fill it all the way up to the top, because if it comes out the top, then raw gas gets into the evap system, the evap canister that filters the fumes out, so it doesn't pollute the air. And when it's gasoline gets in there, raw gasoline instead of fumes, it ends up ruining it. So they'll end up ruining these things so they can rip off their customers for a few dollars. I mean, I paid a lot of money to rent that car. It's an insult that they charge me $2.63 for gasoline. But hey, that's how cheap these things are getting. Not bad enough they charged a fortune to rent the car. Then they had insults of, here's another $2.63. Peter Florida once says, I have an odometer discrepancy. I bought a 2016 Jeep, said it had 46,000 miles in the odometer. Trip B says it's over 67,000 miles. How is that possible? Well, it would only be possible if somehow they cheated on the odometer. I mean, that's the only thing that I could possibly think of, because, you know, your trips show how far you go on a trip. And unless you push the reset button and they go to zero and start over again, that's going to be the real mileage on it. Now, I would not put any money on Carfax information. They're just passing information from something else. They have no idea. They've never seen the vehicle. They just look up records of what they saw, and if, say, somebody set back the odometer before they got it inspected, the inspection says it's got 65,000 miles. Carfax is going to report that it has 65,000 miles on it. Data, like they say, garbage in, garbage out. All Carfax is a reporting information company. They glean things from various sources, which of course are paperwork sources. They could be bad data, they could be made up, and then they just pass it on and say, oh no, this car wasn't in a wreck, or this car has this many miles, or that. It's necessarily going to fit what actually happens in a car. I have had people bring me cars that I checked out for money. Is it a good car to buy? Is it a bad car? And I spent a couple hours doing it because they were paying me, right? I had one, and the Carfax had never been in a wreck. And I look under the car, it's a white car. The radiator's got white spray paint, I mean the car's been resprayed, right? Then I found new parts. The fender was replaced, and I could see the fenders, they don't paint them and bolt them on. They bolt them on, then they paint them, right? The bolts had shear marks on them from being taken off and putting back on again. They would have been painted at the factory, you wouldn't see that. You look at a brand new car, you'll see all the bolts are clean, right? Well, if the paint on the bolts are crimped some, that means somebody got a wrench and took them off and put them back on again. So the car had obviously been in a wreck, and Carfax said it wasn't, so you can't believe that stuff. Now, if it says it had been in a wreck, I'd probably believe, yes, it was. But if it said it wasn't, I don't know. I wouldn't believe it. I'd have to check it out with my own eyes. Hello3334 says, my car alarm keeps going off at night. I got an 03 Camry. I did replace my battery. Before I installed the new battery, it would go off all the time. And now it just beeps like it wants to go off, but it doesn't. Can anybody tell me how I can disable this alarm? Key fob works. That's a factory alarm, and they're pretty hard to disable. Now you say the only thing it's doing is beeping, right? If I were you, I would go to the beeping device, find where the little beeper is, and just cut the wire so it doesn't beep anymore. Be a simple fix. You obviously have some type of electrical short in the car, because you said before it would go off with a battery, because that was an old battery that was weak. right? Now you got a new battery, it doesn't go off, but it beeps. They measure if somebody's stealing the car. That alarm system measures for any kind of electrical drain. And when it sees a certain electrical drain, that they think, oh, somebody opened the door, the dome light came on, that's a drain, and put the alarm off. That's how they work. So in your case, you got some minor drain, and it's minor enough to make it beep, but not make it set off. So, I mean, if the only thing it's doing now is beeping, find the beeper, cut the wire, and just live with it. You want to spend, it's an 03, it's an old car. I wouldn't spend a bunch of money tracing through the wiring system to try to figure out what's wrong. Here's a Q11 says, I found an 86 Toyota Corolla with 2,397,701 miles on it. The guy's a medical doctor, and he drives all over Africa with it. The AC still works. And in 2007, he changed the radio and put in a modern one. He did have to replace the leather seats in 2011 when they tore apart from age. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Now, they don't sell the diesels here in the United States. And I don't care what anybody says. The best engines that Toyota ever made were the 1.8. That's a 1.8 liter diesel. But they have this thing about 1.8 liter engines running forever. I had an 81 Toyota Corolla SR5. It had a 1.8. My 94 Celica has a 1.8 liter engine. My 2007 Matrix has a 1.8 liter four-cylinder engine. Toyota just got the books on 1.8 liter engines. They knew how to make it. And of course, the rest of the car follows suit. The rest of the car went the whole way too, you know. The rest of the car went 2,397,000 miles too. That just shows you the unbelievable build quality of those things. And unfortunately, I don't think they're building them that strong anymore. That was back in '86 Corolla. Everything is cheaper plastic. There's no way the plastic will last that long. It'll start cracking and breaking. But that shows you how they made them. You get 2.3 million miles out of a Toyota Corolla. Lovey My 05 says, I got a Kia Optima that won't communicate with the scan tool. I took it to a dealer. They couldn't communicate with the scan tool either. They said wires are burnt and fuses are blown. They fix it, but it still won't communicate. What can I do? Well, here's the problem. If it did have a bunch of burnt wires, it probably fried circuits in the computer and it will never communicate. A lot of people don't understand. Computers work on very low power in cars. Generally, it's a 5-volt reference signal, and it uses only milliamps, which is thousandths of an amp. Not 1,000 amps, but a thousandths of an amp power. Hardly any power. So they can't fuse any of the stuff going to the computer. You get the wires short out, melt. That's going to feed back shortage to the computer. It's going to fry driver circuits. Now, depending on what circuits it fries, the car still might run. Obviously, you're driving it around. It'll probably never be able to communicate without replacing the computer itself. Now, I mean, if it runs okay, my advice is I would live with it. You're saying you can't, you want to reprogram another key fob, but I would just say forget it. I would just live with it. If you got a key that works, I would just live with it. Jackie says, are Audi cars expensive to maintain? I'm interested in Audi Q5. Are Audis like other luxury European car companies like BMW? When the warranty runs up, they become ridiculously expensive to maintain? Do fish swim in water? Yes, of course they are. I mean, I worked on it when they first came into the United States. And even as a kid, I thought, this is the stupidest kind of car I ever met in my life. In the case of that, to change the alternator fan belt, you had to take the motor mount off the car. Now, who the heck would design a car that stupid? Now, that car, compared to the modern ones, was nothing. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. The new ones are so high-tech, so expensive. The parts cost so much here in the United States. You would be a fool to buy an Audi. I tell people, you want to get an Audi, right? You want to get one, get it out of your system, lease it. Then you know what you're going to spend when the lease is up. Give them the stupid thing back, and you won't have to pay a penny to maintain the stupid thing because you're just leasing it. That's what I do if I were you. Do not buy one. And by all means, don't buy a used one, or you're really asking for trouble because it'll already have a bunch of miles on it. It'll probably be just primed to start falling into the big money pit. Thomas B. says, what are your thoughts on a Mazda 3 Skyactiv X? I tested the Corolla Hybrid and I found it nice, but it didn't convince me. I missed my manual gearbox. Now I'm looking at a Mazda 3 Skyactiv X. 2-liter, 176 horsepower, naturally aspirated manual gearbox. Why not? Mazda and Toyota have a much tighter relationship than they ever did. Toyota owns quite a bit of Mazda. They're even building cars in the same assembly line now. I believe it's in Alabama, in a new factory. You want a standard transmission car and have fun? Buy that. To begin with, the one problem of Mazdas in the past, not as much today, but in the past, was their automatic transmission stunk. Well, you're buying a manual, so you don't care. You're going to be shifting it yourself. So yes, it could be an excellent car. Last quite some time. That would be you miss a manual, you want to get a manual, that would definitely be a good one to buy. They do get phenomenal gas mileage. They're fun to drive. If that's the size of car you want and how it rides, road test one. Because I always tell people, don't just buy a car without road testing that model. My brother brother-in-law did once, and then he went on a trip from Houston to Canada and back and had to sell the car because his back was killing him. He said, the seats are uncomfortable, it hurts my back. Always road test one to see if you're comfortable in it first. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.